Hello and welcome back everyone. My name is Alyssa and this is Into the Heartwild. Today I'm bringing you guys my top 10 books from 2021 and I will be 100% honest with you guys. I had a very rough 2021 reading wise. There was just a lot of books that I was just like, yeah, it's all right, yeah, it's good, or nah, this is terrible, or this is horrendous. So honestly, finding 10 books to fit this list was a little bit difficult because ultimately I think I had more of like a top 5, but I noticed everybody seems to do like a top 10, so I'm gonna do what everybody else is doing. I know I've also seen a couple other people do like honorable mentions. I don't have that either. I'm sorry. I just wasn't a good reading year last year, even though like I read a lot of stuff. But yeah, so with that said, let's go ahead and let's jump into book number 10. And I have Fugitive, Telemetry by Martha Wells. The sixth? I think it's the 6th installment for Murderbot. In general, I just love Murderbot. I love the Murderbot series. It's so fun to read. I've read it 3 times. Once by myself, and then once by my best friend, and then once by myself again. I love it so much. So this was just another great installment into the series. I just love how each book just kind of stands on its own. I really liked seeing a Murderbot just kind of like butt heads with another person, but at the same time like feeling like Murderbot was just, it was all a competition to it. It was just like, I'm better than you because I'm half robot and you're human, you're stupid. So it was definitely fun seeing that like competitive side of Murderbot come out in this one. But overall, another great installment to the Murderbot series. Next up is number 9. We have The Black Cauldron, book 2 in the Chronicles of Prydain by Lloyd Alexander. This was the year that I read the entire series for the first time ever in my life, because somehow or another this missed my radar as a child. And I have to say, after reading the entire series, this is the strongest book in the series, and I do understand why Disney based their movie off of this one book. It has the most action. This is when you meet Elanwi and you really get introduced to like her funness, and like she's very reminiscent of like how they portrayed her in the Disney movie, and you just kind of like really see the group come together. So for the whole series, this is definitely the strongest in all 5 books. Coming in at number 8 is The Forgotten Beasts of El by Patricia A. McKillip. This was a book that I feel like it lied to me in one aspect, but blew me away in another aspect. I really ended up liking Patricia's writing style. It's very beautiful. You can see all my little tabs are still here, and all of those tabs are just references to just lines that I was just like, that is beautiful. That's beautiful. And I think like my favorite line involves one character telling another character, because one character is basically just like, if I die, I die, move on with your life. And the other character is like, I'm not gonna let you walk them stars by yourself. And it's along those lines. I don't want to say like the full quote because I don't want to like spoil it for anybody, which is why I'm not giving character names. But I just thought that was just so just like, I want someone to tell me they're never gonna let me walk the stars by myself. It just, for me, it just stands out as just being like very beautifully written. It's a good story and it's interesting, and it has its faults in it too, with, you know, like every man who meets the main character, what's her name? Sybil, they instantly fall in love with her kind of thing, like come on. But ultimately it has a lot of these very sweet, wholesome family moments, and then like these sweet romantic moments, and I like sweet romance. I don't like all that other smutty, spicy stuff. I like sweet. Coming in at number 7 is The Two-Faced Queen by Nick Martell. This is book 2 in the Legacy of the Mercenary King. And while I did initially struggle with the beginning of this story, towards the end, when everything finally started connecting and making sense, then I started to enjoy it more. It seemed, with the first book compared to the second book, I did struggle in the beginning of the first book as well, because that took place like with like a lot of like building up and everything. The first half of this book, it feels very standalone-ish, and it feels like it could stand on its own, even though it is connected to this other story. And there were some things that I was a little disappointed with, because like I didn't get to learn more about the moon. Hopefully that'll be tackled in book 3. But we did get to dive more into the magic system, and it's a very, very interesting magic system that involves like consequences, and I do enjoy that aspect. And then we got to learn more about dark. We also got to experience some of the broader aspects of the world that this takes place in, and I liked the fact that like the continued idea of sacrifice for magic use stretches to other areas of this world, and it's an ongoing theme, because I definitely, for me, I think that's like one of the biggest things that I like about the magic system is I don't always like when magic doesn't come at a cost, so I like that this is one of those series where magic comes at a cost. The end of the book, though, is where most of the action finally comes together. The reveals start being made, connections start making sense. There were a few moments, where, it got to me a little bit. The end definitely hit me with the emotions. That is one thing I think Martell is very good at, is like he is very good at like his buildup may take a while, but the payoff is definitely worth it in the long run. And that's how I definitely feel about this one, because now it's got me like excited for the third book, because I'm like, okay, like how are you gonna finish this off? How are you going to finish connecting all of these things and wrap this up? I will say I was a little disappointed that Michael didn't do as many stupid and dumb decisions that he did in the first book, because that was like my biggest like draw point to him. I love that aspect about him. So I hope I get to see a little bit more of his stupid decision makings in book 3. But until then, I'll at least I always have book 1 where he was just a big stupid head. So yeah. Coming in at number 6 is The Lives of Saints by Leigh Bardugo. This is actually just like a companion book to her Six of Crows and Grisha World. That's the one, Grishaverse. It's a companion. And one of the things I love is when authors create myth and folklores in their own worlds, and then they take the time to expand on those and actually bring those folklores within their world to life. And that's what this book is. It's just full of the different kinds of folk tales that would technically be told in her Grisha verse. And so like these would be like the stories that like her characters would tell to their children and so forth. And I really love that aspect, because I love myths and folklore, and I love the idea behind them. So I love the fact that she created this whole book just full of the myths that exist in her world that she created. I do have a favorite in here. Which one was it? Sanct Matthias. Yeah, it was the patron saint of those who love and care for animals. I liked his story a lot. Some were stronger than others, but ultimately it was just the idea of her bringing to life the myths and stories that her characters talk about. So number 5 is actually a book that I don't own yet still, because apparently my local Barnes & Noble is just like not gonna carry it. I don't freaking know. But it is called Maleficent 7 by Cameron Johnston. I really enjoyed this book because it follows the point of views of villains, and it's one of those stories where like all the villains come together and they're trying to take out an even bigger villain. And while there were certain elements of the story that were predictable, it was still ultimately very enjoyable. And I loved seeing the story from the villain's point of view. Like that was the big thing. Like I liked following these like not so great characters, like these characters that are kind of bad, and then seeing like how they hated each other and didn't get along. It made it really fun. And it was one of those stories where like I just like kept going and kept going. Like I just didn't stop, because it was just so fun to read. So if you haven't read that one yet, do check it out. From what I know, it is a standalone. but very fun. Coming in at number 4 is Mira's Last Dance by Lois, McMaster, Bujold. This is within the Penric and Desdemona series. I read all of them that are currently released except for 2 of them, so I did not read all of them. I don't know why I said that. I've read majority of the books that are currently released for this, and I read them all last year, so it was very hard picking out which one from the series I liked most, and ultimately I ended up going with Mira's Last Dance because this was just hilarious. It was just so fun, and you got to one of the basis of how Penric and Desdemona work is Penric is a young man. His age varies throughout the entire series, but when you meet him, he's a young man. He gets a demon transported into him who lives in his head. But this demon came with 10 others, and they're all women. There's also a horse and a lion. So Mira is one of those demons in his head because the demons take on the personality of the previous holder. So each of them have different names. Mira is one of them, and so this was actually one of the installments where you actually got to like really interact with one of the other demons in his head, because most of the time he interacts with Desdemona because that's the most recent one. And it's just, it was so fun. The things that Penric went through, the things that Penric did, the things you find out this female demon has put him through. Because you learn some things that she has almost gotten this poor man beaten up, okay? You know? And I just think it was just like, out of all of them, it was just one of those in the installment that just was so fun. And I just spent so much time laughing and just enjoying myself while reading it. Coming in at number 3 is Theft of Swords by Michael J. Sullivan. I love Hadrian. We're just gonna start with that. I love this man. You know? But the duo of him and Royce are just perfect. I absolutely loved watching them. I love their banter, the way they interact with each other, the way that they know each other. Just, they're a great duo to follow in a story. And I honestly 100% feel that this is like a great series for someone who wants to move into adult fantasy, because it uses a lot of classic tropes and it's very easy to read. You don't feel bombarded by like massive world buildings and, you know, all these magical terminologies and everything. And for the longest time, I didn't even really like think there was like a super classic like fantasy idea going on to it until like dwarves and elves started showing up, and I was like, that happens in this book? It took me by surprise, but I ended up like really liking it and digging it and everything. And then like there's dragons, there's wizards. It's so classic in everything that it does, but it's so fun and easy to read, and it's just very easy to follow along. So I do think it would be like a great starter book for someone. It looks intimidating because it's so big, but it's actually 2 books in one. So it's really not that bad. But it's just overall, it was so fun, and I'm so glad that I finally read it, and I'm hoping to finish out the rest of the series this year. Coming in at number 2 is In the Orbit of Sirens by T.A. Bruno. I love this book so much. I love this world, this series, just the Ochnai. I love them with all of my heart. Giant talking birds. Like, come on. Can you do better than that? Can you? Like, you know, and just the planet that Bruno has created in here. Like, I know I've talked about this series in one of my other videos, but it is wonderful, okay? I want to live on this planet. I want to be friends with the Ochnai, okay? Outside of just my my insistent need to just like talk about how much I want to live on this planet, Bruno's storytelling is amazing. He does start out the story with like there's some time differences, but the way he brings them together to where everybody's in like the same time frame was so unique and interesting. Maybe unique isn't the right word, but it was still, it worked. He made these two different timelines, because like one was like more future, whereas like one was further back, but then like they met up, and just the way he did it, it made sense and it worked, and you were like, yes, I agree with you. One of the biggest aspects is like most of this book is just really spent exploring this planet and learning who the Ochnai is and everything, but there's also the Sirens, and somebody from the humans has gone missing, and all these problems are arising because of him, and his story broke my heart. It broke my... I was very invested in Roland's aspect of the story. I just wanted to know what was going to happen with him, where it was going to go, and ultimately it left me in tears. So that should give you an idea of where that went. You know, it just all together, it was just, it was captivating in so many different ways, from the world building to the writing style to the characters, the story, just everything. It was just, I fell in love. Like I consider myself a baby reader in the world of sci-fi, and this was spectacular. In my opinion, this was spectacular. I love this so much. I have the second book as well. I've read it as well. It took a lot to pick between the two, but the reason why I picked the first book over the second book is because, the one, I don't like how the second book ended, because I feel like the whole world is gonna fall apart and crash and everybody's gonna be sad, and I'm gonna do a lot of crying when book 3 starts, okay? Because I did a lot of crying at the end of book 2. But Roland. Ultimately, Roland is what made me pick this book, because I was so heavily invested in everything that happened with Roland in this book. And when I was weighing my two options, because I could have technically put them both here, but I didn't, Roland won. His aspect of this story was just, it was phenomenal. That's not to say the second book isn't phenomenal either, because it is, okay? I just told you guys, like, it left me a crying mess multiple times, not just once, okay? Multiple times. So please do yourself a favor, go find this book, go read this book. It is phenomenal in every sense of the way, and I am patiently waiting for book 3. And then coming in at number 1 is The Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne. This is technically my introduction to John Gwynne's work in general. I own The Faithful and the Fallen, except for Wrath, because I can't freaking find it anywhere. And I own the trilogy that comes after that, which I'm blanking on the name for it. But I ended up getting an arc of this one, and I read it, and I immediately understood why everybody likes his writing and his characters and everything. Just the biggest thing for me with this one was how he connected the 3 different point of views at the very end, because it just left me going, book 2, please. You know, like, there were many moments where, like, I felt like my heart was breaking. You know, I know a lot of people love Orca. Is that her name? I want to make sure I have the right name. Yeah, okay. So a lot of people like Orca, and I do like her as well. She is a great, strong female character who will burn the world down for her child, and I love that. I love the fact that he has a mother in this story, because that's something I can connect with, because I'm a mom. And she's so strong, and she's so wonderful, and she's so just like, I will murder anybody, and I like that. But I actually ended up really falling for Varg's portion of the story. Just, it hit me in more emotional ways. Like, that's not saying that what happens with Orca's side of the story isn't emotional, because it is, especially closer towards the end. But Varg, from like the minute you meet him, you know, you're just like, for me, he was that guy I wanted to root for. And what he finds along the way on his journey, I was just like, this is so beautiful. You know, because like I don't know how many people have read this book by now. I'm pretty sure people who maybe hopefully are watching this have read this, so they know what that element is that he finds. Varg's portion of the story was just beautiful. I really fell for he ended up being my favorite character, and there are so many side characters in his portion of the story that I absolutely loved as well. Eivor's character, is that her name? It's always the third one where I'm like, wait, hold on. Do I have the right name? I'm like, what? I always tend to forget her name. I think it's Eivor. And either that, I'm thinking of it's Elvar. Her name's Elvar. I was thinking of my Valhalla game. Excuse me, everybody. Elvar's a portion of the story. She took a while. She took a while to grow on me before I ended up like really enjoying her portion of the story. It wasn't really towards why is this sentence so hard? It wasn't really until the end of the book that I started to appreciate her character more. There we go. I think I got that out right. But one of the aspects that was in Elvar's portions of the story that I super fell in love with was Gwynne. I loved that man. I don't want anything to happen to him. So if something happens to him, I'm going to be very upset. Okay? I'm going to be very upset. Outside of just the character work and how he managed to connect all of his point of views, the gods that he has created are very interesting because, you know, there's animals involved, and what I really liked was seeing how the world was built up and around the bodies of dead gods. Like that was so interesting. It was such an interesting element. I was like, because I remember one of the scenes, you know, where they're just walking along and they're just like, they realize that like they're kind of like walking through like the dead body of a god, and I'm just like, that's insane. And one of the things I really appreciate about his writing is how easy it is to picture it, because I'm one of those people who pictures what they read, and I could just picture so many things in my head that he created, and it blew me away. I will say one of the biggest aspects that I know I was different in comparison to other people was a lot of other people were talking about how like there was a lot of scenes where it broke them or something. This book didn't break me until literally the last page. The last page. It broke me, and I was just like, that's very rude to end on that note. I would like the second book right now, please, because I need to recover. It was just, he took everything that he had and he built it up into that final scene, and I was just like, so definitely an amazing start to an amazing series, and I cannot wait to see where the rest of it goes. It's definitely gotten me to understand why everybody loves Gwynne's writing. It's just, it's captivating and it's enticing, and you can visualize it all inside of your head, and it's just beautiful, and his character creation is amazing. So that's it for my top 10 books of 2021. If there was anything in this list that you read that you also enjoyed, leave a comment down below, leave a like if you enjoyed this video, subscribe because that would be awesome, and I will talk to you guys next time. Bye.